Okay guys, as you can see, I'm standing here in a set of overalls, which is very different to my usual attire, which I've usually got on my BMW jacket, my waistcoat, something like that, but today I'm in overalls. And that's purely because, as many of you guys know, I purchased my 630i a couple of months ago now, and now summer's coming to an end. There's a lot of jobs that have to be done on this. Now, I did say to many of you guys, we are going to record this purely because there's a lot that needs to be done on the engine side still. I did most of it off camera, but now we're going to be focusing on doing it all on camera. So today's job is going to be the valve cover gasket replacement. We have to replace all that. It's well overdue and it needs to be done. So I'm not going to talk anymore. Let's get onto this video and let's replace the valve cover gasket on the N52 engine. Okay guys, so we're at the N52 engine, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm not going to bore you with removing all the plastics. We are going to go ahead and remove all the plastics. Then once we do all that, we'll be able to start showing you how to remove the magnesium valve cover to replace the valve cover gasket. This is a job I will do. You guys will see it all in fast forwards. It's really not hard to be able to do it. You've seen me many times remove all these plastic parts. So what we're going to go ahead and do is I'll get onto that, remove all that, then we'll focus on the valve cover. So now I'm just going to quickly remove it all. And there we have it guys, that is all the plastics removed. We've just got to lift off the engine cover, which is just pull it up and pull it off, which you'll see me do. And then we've got full access to the valve cover, which I'll move the camera around because I'm not going to leave you there while we're removing it so you can see how it's all removed. And we'll get onto that, but at the end of the day, this car is not going to be put back together straight after we've done the valve cover anyway. It will take time because there's a lot I want to do on this car to get it fully ready. Many of you guys know it's at that mileage where it needs everything. The valve cover hasn't been leaking seriously. It's only been tiny bits, but you can smell the oil as it drops onto the headers every time on like the third start. When you third start it and or when it runs too hot, you'll be able to smell the oil burning off the headers. So I have to get it changed regardless. And now is the time to do it. I'm not driving it at the moment, but I will be once obviously I rectify all these faults because this is stuff that has to be done, hasn't been done. And I know that because all the plastics are still like brand new, where it's like nobody's ever removed them. So that's something we know straight away, nothing's ever been done here. All the old CCV pipes at the back here are all brittle, like they're gonna snap. You can hear them probably. You can hear them like they're gonna snap. They're very old, it's the original BMW stuff. We've got a new one for that anyway, so we don't have to worry about that. That'll be on another video replacing the CCV. So the manifold's gonna come off for the first time as well. So that's what I mean, we're gonna be tearing this all down and redoing everything before I feel comfortable to say the job is complete on this car. So next job we're going to do is removing the valve cover gasket. So what we're going to do is just going to lift up on the valve cover, just like that. I don't want to end up bending the bracket because the bracket and the bolts actually hold down nicely. And you can see that this is the bracket that holds down onto the actual magnesium valve cover itself. So that is now been removed and everything's still intact, so we'll put that back on later on. So now you can see the actual valve cover itself, and this is what we're going to be removing. There is a lot to remove. Obviously you've got to take off obviously the injector wiring harness to be able to fully pull off the magnesium valve cover. You need to remove your ignition coils, the wiring harness, release all the bolts. There is a few things you're going to have to remove, obviously the valvetronic motor, which I'll show you how to do that. Just loads. Just remember, before you start this job, make sure you've got your new gasket, you've got your new valvetronic motor gasket, your new eccentric shaft sensor seal, and you've also got, definitely, most importantly, new bolts. These are torque to yield bolts. They're torqued to 7 Newton meters and in a 90-degree angle after you let them rest. Do remember that. Something people get very, very mixed up on. They think you can reuse the old bolts. I will tell you right now, if you try and reuse them old bolts and retorque them, and redo the degrees, which is 90-degree turn, you will snap them. Some of the time they may come out, other times they will not. You make that mistake and they snap and they don't come out, you're basically screwed. I would strongly advise to buy new bolts. They're only £20 for all the new bolts. You can get Febby ones now, which are basically like genuine, very, very cheap to buy. Gasket's about £20 as well. So 40 quid all in, you can renew your valve cover gasket. Obviously that's without the valvetronic motor gasket seal, which is about a tenner, and the eccentric shaft seal, which is about 15 quid. Really not expensive, so do make sure to do that. Ignition coils we're gonna pull out, and then we'll get on to disconnecting the eccentric shaft sensor plug, because that's gonna have to come away with this whole harness down here, and valvetronic motor gasket as well. For the first thing we're gonna go ahead and remove is the ignition coils, so you just pull them up. Then if you wanna get them out, you just use a screwdriver, pull each one out. Very, very simple. And again with this one, prise the connector off, pull up and pull it out. Now what we're gonna do is take off this eccentric shaft sensor plug. I'll show you how to do that. You've got to be very careful when you snap it. So we'll get that off. So then that's everything from the harness disconnecting. We'll take this connector off as well, which we can just do right now actually, just like that. Now that's disconnected, now we'll just remove that one. Now what we're gonna try and do as well, we're gonna have to try and take out this eccentric shaft seal before, if we can, because otherwise it's too hard to get it out after. To get out of this eccentric shaft sensor seal can be quite tricky. Because they are quite hard and they can crumble just like that. You can see it's lifting like that, and that's now out. You can see there, that's the eccentric shaft seal out. Obviously cover's a bit scored, but apart from that the sensor's fine. As long as you don't damage the sensor, that's how you get them out. And that's out already, so we don't have to worry about taking that out. Once the valve covers obviously come off, that's already out now. So what we're gonna move to is taking the valvetronic motor off. So the valvetronic motor bolts are an E8. So what you've got to do here is you've got to just remove them, just like that. This one removed. Most of you should have a E8 Torx in your garage or your kit. Make sure to use it. Do not try and use an 8mm on them because they will strip. So just make sure of that, and make sure to keep all your bolts safe. These I'm going to put up on my magnetic tray on my lift because I don't want them to get lost. Okay guys, so now we've removed the 2 bolts from the valvetronic motor. What we need to do is to get to this one right down here, which is holding it onto the actual valve cover itself. To get to that bolt, we have to actually remove this wiring harness for the ignition coils and all the electrics. Now you can see the 2 bolts here are actually grounding these grounds for your ignition coils. There's 2 of them, there's one in the corner here, and there's one here that you need to remove. They are 8mm E-Torxes, which we have right here. I'm going to be using my impact gun to remove them. So we'll just get this other one unloose. Now you need to be careful not to lose the bolts because they do drop out, and do remember to put your grounds back as well, because a lot of people do forget that. We're just going to take them out. Now what you're going to do is you're going to remove that out the way. Now to do that fully, the easiest way I've always done it is to remove this clip on the top here. I'll show you how to remove that as well. Now the clip on the wiring harness right here, you can remove it. You just have to prise up like this and it should release out of this locking tab. It does come up, I know that much. And then it brings the whole wiring harness out, just like that. And what you can do is pull that out like that. And the same for this one, right here as well. Because what you want to do is be able to remove this out the way from here, just like that, to free it all up, just like that. And you want to take this out as well, which is a little box, and then what you can do is flip that one right out the way. So now what you can do is get to the other bolt down here, which is another 8mm, which I'll show you how to get to it. So to get to it, I'm just going to go from behind, and I'll go by feel, because it's quite deep down there, which is right here. And you can see there, just as I do that, you can see the valvetronic motor drops. This bolt you have to be careful with because it is only tiny and you don't want to lose it. Bolt right there, that's what you're going to be removing from underneath. And you can see here the valvetronic motor's already dropped out, how it should, and that's the valvetronic motor out of the valve cover itself, just So now what we're going to do is take the gasket off, and these can be a bit hard and stuck on sometimes, but you can get them off very easily, just like that. And you can see oil's been leaking out behind it, and then what it does is leak down here into the spark plug holes. You can see that already on the back of it. Oil's been getting behind that already, so that's what I mean. It is time to change all the pieces on the valve cover because of that reason. Okay, so now that's done, what we're going to go ahead and do is remove the injector harness, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that because we need to get the injector harness up because it's in the way of the bolts behind here to release the valve cover, and I just want to be able to whip it all off quickly. So the only way to do it is to remove this. We need to take out all these as well, which is the lambda sensor wires. Remember how they go, otherwise you'll end up mixing them up to put them back. Obviously you're not disconnecting them, you're just moving them out the way of the injector harness just so you can get to the injector harness's plugs. So what we'll go ahead and do is now remove that, and I'll show you how to do all that. So I know this won't be probably easy to see, but when you come to do this job, you'll get a brief explanation of how it's done. You'll be able to see. So what you've got here is locking clips on the back of the wires, and what you've got to do is use like a pry tool or a pick to try and remove them off, just to pull them off of the connector, and you need to try and straighten it up as much as you can to remove it just like that. Then you should be able to pull up on them, and you've got to go all the way along and do that. It's not easy, it can be a bit fiddly, but it comes as you start doing it, you'll learn how to do it. And then that's the injector harness off, you can see there. Just make sure you put all your clips back on, so it, just like that, so it clips back down. Okay guys, so now we've got the injector harness removed. We're gonna start unbolting all the valve cover, so we just wanna go round like this and just take them all out. You've got to remember these bolts ain't torqued down very high, so you can use an impact gun, it will remove them. So to get on the one down the bottom here, trying to get real position it, but it won't position. Might need to use an 8mm socket just for this one, which works, just to remove it because you can't get in there with an E-Torx. So you have no choice but to do that. Obviously an 8mm will still work fine. And you can see here, I'm removing them all one by one. Obviously there's still a lot more. You've still got them going around here as well, which you're gonna have to take off the CCV over the back here. I'll show you how to get to that in a second. I haven't removed it, we're gonna be breaking that one off because I'm not trying to save it because we're gonna be doing new ones. So that's not an issue. We've got to take out these right here, which I believe is 1, 2, 3 bolts here that hold it down in the middle as well. We've got to get them out, which we'll get out in a second. So you'll probably see my hand going down the back here, which are not easy because they're all over the place. You do need to change your position on how you're going to get to them. Quite hard if you don't know how to do it. But obviously, where I've done this job many, many times, I know what to do. It's very hard to show you guys down here, but there is, I think there's 3 down the back here. I can't remember entirely. So that's the other one out now as well. It's another bolt exactly the same. So now what we're gonna do is I have to break off that pipe here. I'm gonna be breaking it off because I don't need it on. Break it off with a screwdriver, just like that. That's now off. And obviously you take off the plastic piece, which I'm gonna break off here. Now that's off. And then we've got one more bolt up here, which will now release, which we don't need the universal bit on. We can just use our 8mm and just crack that one loose. It sits at the back here. So there you go, just come loose. You can see there, that's the other one from the back. So now what we're gonna go ahead and do is I'm now gonna remove these 10mm bolt ones, which are right down here. Again, they're not torqued out very tight either. Just crack them all loose. All 3 of them. That's all 3 of them now out. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm just going to go round, make sure every single bolt is out of the valve cover before I start to pull it or anything like that. Make sure we're clear, everything's out the way. While we do that, every bolt's out, you feel around, and if they're all out and you're happy with it, then you can go ahead to pull the valve cover off. Now the valve cover isn't going to come off easy. You're going to have to give it a few blows with like a rubber mallet to remove it, which I'll show you how to do that next. Now when you do strike it to remove it, do be careful with all this wiring, your oxygen sensors and everything. Make sure you lift the valve cover out, try and lift it the way it wants to come out, not the way you want it to come out. As you can see there, just a few whacks releases it and breaks the tension. While you lift the valve cover off. And then it's just like that, it will come off easy. And obviously you've got this, you can just lower that back down. You've got your gasket here, which is for your spark plug tubes. You can see there that's now removed as well, it comes off with the valve cover. We're gonna clean up all this area, clean up all around the valve, where the valve cover goes. And then we will put the new valve cover on. So you can see here as well, this is an original BMW part. See, there's got the BMW logo everywhere. Right there in the center as well. This ain't never been changed. But it has been leaking, you can see oil's getting there. Like I said, the reason I'm changing it because I could smell oil burning onto the headers when it was stopped and whatever else. So it makes sense to get this done. Obviously, while you're in here, now's the time to check all your guide rails, obviously your timing chain and everything like that. And to be honest, this engine looks very, very clean. No kind of carboned up oil stains or carboned up oil or anything like that. I know this car has full service history, so I do know it's been looked after, but you would expect it for an M52, but this one's really, really clean. It's also a good time as well, if many of you guys are having issues and you change your solenoid, things that ain't got other issues, to change this eccentric shaft sensor, because this is responsible for obviously the valvetronic system. You can see here it's connected to the valve lift controls, and this is what controls it when to lift these for the variable valve timing and valvetronic itself. So obviously if this don't work and you disconnect it, it will stop the whole valvetronic system working altogether. So if you are having problems with your eccentric shaft sensor, do make sure to check that as well and to remove it and replace it now. It isn't hard at all. You can easily replace it with the engine cover removed, so it makes sense to do it. Obviously I haven't got any issues with mine, but who's to say you might not, and if you do have any issues with it, or you've got a suspected feeling that you're having issues with it, change it, otherwise you'll be taking the valve cover off all again to do it anyway. So it makes perfect sense to do it right now while you've got everything apart. Okay guys, so here we have the new gasket set, which we're now going to be fitting to the valve cover, and obviously putting this gasket in the spark plug tubes. You've got alignment dowels here and over here, which holds the gasket in place so it don't come out of place when you put the valve cover actually back on. The other gasket has got alignment dowels which are here, and there's another one in the corner as well, down there as well, which hold it. There's only 2 that hold it on, so bear that in mind, one here and one down there, and it holds the other gasket on while you actually put the valve cover back on. Now it can be a bit fiddly because you've got to maneuver everything out the way while you put the valve cover back on. As many of you guys know, this electrical harness doesn't move so much and you can end up trapping the lambda sensor wires which are down there in the corner, so make sure you move them as well. Don't even bolt anything down until you've done that. Obviously we do have all our new bolts as well. These are Febby bolts. I'll show you how to put them all in. You'll probably see here I opened them just to make sure I counted them, because sometimes they like to give you not the right amount and then you end up not being able to complete the job. So I've counted all the bolts to make sure everyone was correct, and they are. So that's all the new bolts we're going to be fitting. We'll be binning the old ones. So we'll get on to installing the gaskets now. So I'm just going to open up all the gasket. It's not hard at all. And these gaskets only cost me around £28, something like that. It wasn't expensive at all to purchase the gaskets for this. You can see there, That's how you want to put that one. You want it with these marks coming downwards, not up. And you've also got this gasket as well, which you're going to have to be very careful. It does go this way around, so we'll be doing it to be careful not to bend it, because obviously it is a metal gasket. So we're just going to put this box down. You've got to find a way it goes around the valve cover, which is this way. And you're going to have to be careful as you do this, because like I say, everything is in the way. This is the most fiddly part, is doing this on the valve covers. Because like I say, all the wiring harnesses are in the way and everything. But once you get it, it should be fine. We'll just stick it on the alignment dowel like that. Then you just want to make sure everything else is out the way, so all your lambda plugs, make sure they're out the way so that it can obviously seat down onto the other dowel. Because there is another dowel, which is, like I said, right in the corner. So we're just pushing that in, just like that. That one's now on the alignment dowel as well. So you've got them both on the alignment dowel, so I was right. There's one right in the corner here and one right down in the lower corner, right at the end of the head itself. So once you've got that all positioned, then you've got to get your valve cover back on. This is the tricky part, because obviously trying to maneuver it into position might not be as easy as it seems because of all this. Like I said, this can take a lot of patience. It can be quite difficult, but it's gone back on. All you want to do is make sure your, obviously, lambda sensor wires are not trapped underneath, which they're not. And then you can align this, and again, this will lock into the dowels, so you know when it's properly seated, because it will lock down onto the dowels itself as well. And once you're happy with everything, it's sitting properly, the holes are all lining up correctly, then you want to install your bolts. So remember, these ones right here will go into the middle. There's only 3 of them. You can't really mix them up. We'll just put them in the middle here, because you're going to start with these ones, tightening them. Just like that. And then the other ones will go all around. So you'll go here, and you'll go here, and just go around with all the bolts, put them in place. And then it's not that, it helps them seat correctly, the valve cover, so you know if the holes are all aligned properly or not. Instead of trying to go to screw them down and then the holes ain't aligned, it will help you just align everything in place correctly. And there we go. All the bolts are now in the valve cover. We are ready to start tightening them down. I'm just gonna quickly use an impact gun, go around them, slowly put them down, because they have to be torqued up. These bolts are torqued to yield. You can't just tighten them and leave them. I'm gonna just quickly go around slowly, put them all down in their place, get the valve cover completely pressed down, and then we'll torque them up. But as I said to you guys, make sure the valve cover gasket area is clean before you put the new gasket, like I did. You would have seen it was all clean. Also make sure nothing is trapped under that valve cover, as you will be removing it and you'll need new bolts. The moment you take them bolts out, you cannot reuse them once you've torqued to yielded them. Do remember that, and make sure to count all your bolts before you even start the job. Do not go around torquing them up, putting each one in individually, torquing them up, to come to find out you're missing one bolt, because I would not recommend, because I know people do this, trying to reuse one of the old ones, because you will snap inside the head. And if it don't come out, and especially if it's one at the back, then it's game over, because you'll have to take the whole head off to be able to drill that out, because that's not an easy job to get to. So what I'm going to do quickly is I'm just going to, just like this, you don't want to go down too hard, you don't want to hear that impact gun click. You should know when it's going to stop. And this is the way I've always done it, and I've been fine. But if you're not comfortable with using an impact gun to tighten them down quickly before torquing them, don't use one. It's very simple, just don't touch one, because if you overdo it even by 1 Newton meter, you'll be 1 Newton meter off. That when you do the degree, you'll still snap the bolt. It can't even be 1 Newton meter off for the 90-degree turn, because the 90-degree turn basically takes them to 10 Newton meters once the engine heats up and it starts stretching, the bolt starts stretching. So do remember that if you'll go 1 Newton meter over, they will snap. Now what I've got to do is get to the back ones to be able to tighten them. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go over the back and tighten the ones that I didn't get to. Okay, and that's now all the bolts just screwed down lightly, ready to now be torqued up. So you guys can see here, I've got my torque wrench set to 7 Newton meters, which you'll probably be able to see on the display right there. That's on 7 Newton meters. You need to torque them to 7, then you need to do a 90-degree angle. Now a 90-degree angle is from about up here down to around 4 o'clock. So you'll come down to around there. That is a 90-degree angle. This one doesn't have a degree angle, basically where it beeps when you reach the degree. But many of you should know what a 90-degree angle is. So it's basically as 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock will do. I would say 3:45 to be precise. So do it just off 90. That's purely because when they actually yield, when the engine's hot, they're gonna pull down even harder. So realistically, you wanna give them that extra gap just to be able to stretch down and not actually break any bolts while they do that. And now many of you will probably see that 7 Newton meters isn't a lot. So we're gonna start in the middle now because we're torquing them up. So you can see here, I'm already at 2, 3, 5, 6, and then you've got to be so careful, just like that. So that's the first one done. We'll now torque this one right here up to 7, and you'll see again, 7 Newton meters isn't a lot. Just like that. Now we'll move up to the middle here and torque this one down. Just like that. Then we'll come down here and torque this one up. And then we'll come up here. And you just want to go back over and check. Do not go to turn them because you never know if you've torqued them. So you just go around checking them all until you find ones that haven't been torqued. Now to get to the back ones in the corner over there, this is where it can actually be hard because you can't get a torque wrench down there. It's very, very nearly impossible to do it, but we're gonna have to try because I have to get a torque wrench in there to torque them up. There isn't much space, but I have to do it. I have to get it in there somehow. Okay, so now we've now tightened every bolt down. What I'm gonna go ahead and do is just check every single one with a normal ratchet to make sure they're not loose. Just like this, put them on. If they don't turn, it means they're already tightened. Just go around, check every single one, just like this. And it helps you know if any are loose and he's not been torqued, then you can put the torque wrench on. If you can see here, I just go around one by one, doing what I need to do. Because like you see here, it's very hard to get a torque wrench in there to be able to torque them bolts down. So now we've done that, what we're gonna go ahead and do is leave this to rest for half hour before we then do the 90-degree turn on all the bolts. You have to leave this to sit. You cannot just go in and start yielding the bolts straight away. Leave them to rest and then do the 90-degree turn, purely because it gives them time to settle down before you then stretch them out. Because if you stretch them out now, they might not be ready. You could end up breaking the bolts. Not only that, when the engine heat cycles and it starts doing its heat cycles, once you're turning the engine on and off, it can damage the bolts as well. Okay guys, so now we're back, and what we're going to be doing now is torquing all the bolts up to a degree. What I'm going to do is I'll do a few so you guys get a drift of how to do it, and obviously once you see me do it, you guys will know how to do it there on. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is do it. I'm going to use my torque wrench to do it. Obviously it's not going to be on because it doesn't do degrees. I could use my bigger one, but the problem with using a bigger one is it's very big. It could end up over stretching them, which we don't want. So I'm just going to do it by using the top up here, and then we'll come downwards to know when we reach 3:45, 4 o'clock, to know when we'll be specifically on 90 degrees. So the first one, you're going to want to come here and you're just going to want to turn it just like this to 4 o'clock, and that's your first one done. Now it ain't hard, and then obviously you want to come down here and do this one, then you do that one, then you come up here and do that one, then come back down here and do that one, and so forth and so forth. And that's what we're going to go ahead and do. I'm not going to just do 90 degrees on all of them here and along here and along here. That's not how you do it. You don't want to do that. You'll cause extra stress on the bolts then is needed, and you can end up snapping them. So now I'll come down here for this one, then do the same for that one. Just like that. Then we'll come up here to this one and do that one. Then we'll come down here in the corner and do this one. Then we'll do this one up here. And the one thing about this is you can always feel if they've been torqued already to their 90 degree angle. You just be careful with that, because you can feel they've already stretched down, so you don't have to stretch them anymore. You'll be able to tell the difference between ones that haven't been stretched and ones that have been stretched. That's why you're meant to leave them each time individually to set down, so then that way they do stretch down. So guys, now everything's now been re-torqued down to the 90 degree angle, 7 Newton meters, and then 90 degrees. Obviously I did let them rest for half hour. Now we can go and put everything back together. Like I was gonna say here, make sure you run over all of the bolts with a normal ratchet. Do not use a torque wrench, because it will be too powerful and you won't be able to tell if they're down or not. Use a normal one like this, put a ratchet on it, and you'll see if you'll be able to turn them or not turn them. If you use a torque wrench, you end up snapping them. This will let you feel if they've pulled themselves down or not. So do use something like this with like just a 1/4 inch racket or 3/4 inch ratchet. Just pull it on top and just see if they budge like that. If they don't budge, it means they've yielded down, as you can see. See, you can't move them. And that's how they need to be. They need to be locked like that at a 90 degree turn, all of them, not just one of them. You can see here, otherwise they will leak, and you don't want that. And the back ones usually yield themselves down very, very quickly compared to all these side ones. So do bear that in mind as well. Make sure they are tightened down, as you will have a leak at the back of your valve cover. Now what we're gonna go ahead and do is we've now got to put all the wiring harnesses back on, the valvetronic motor back on, and get everything back together. So let's go ahead and do that. So I do have a brand new valvetronic motor gasket, of course. So I'm not going to put back on the old one after removing it. So we do have a new one of these. We'll just slot that in and it can go in. Just like that. Now that's in. Just make sure the gasket's all sitting flush. Then you want to put your valvetronic motor back in with this wiring harness. Make sure it sits into the bracket, ready to be bolted back in. Then we're going to turn it back in, which for this you need your T25, and you just want to turn the valvetronic motor back in, just like that. You can see it's turning back in until it locks up against it. And this is a T25 you need to use for that. Then you've got your E-Torx bolts, which you need to put in. They're all the same. We're going to put one down here, where one come out from. You could possibly see where my hands go in to do this. You need to make sure it's aligned. It can be a bit fiddly to do because the bolts are very, very small. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick one in here in the valvetronic motor, just to be on the safe side. Now, once we've done that, we're gonna have to try and sort out all putting on the injector harness back on, which we can do. Just like that. That's now back on. Then we'll pull our cable over. Slide it back in and we'll get our holding clip. You need to get your holding clip here to hold the wire connector back in, just like that. So in that way you can then put all your connectors back on here with your bolts. Do remember your 2 bolts for your ground wires, which one's right here, you'll see me putting it in. Do not forget to put these back correctly, otherwise you have a problem with the ignition coils not firing. And you've also got one over the other side here at the back, which I'm just going to tighten them all down. Just like that. And then what we can do here is now we're going to tuck back in all our stuff that we pulled out. So we'll put that back into the harness. We'll put these all back in here. And we'll put our plug back onto our valvetronic motor. Put this back up here, just like that. And then all our ignition coils are ready to go back. So we'll do that. I know many of you are going to say about the eccentric shaft seal. I'm going to be doing another video for that. So we're just going to tidy up all our wires here now and get them all out of the way, because all our lambda sensor wires are now all in the way, which we don't want. So we'll just move them all. Now, of course, once that's done, we're just going to put in all our ignition coils very easily. Put that one in and just plug it all back in. And then that's about it. Just make sure your ignition coils are back in before you start doing anything else. Make sure all your wires are all up here and solid out the way before you start bolting anything down. Just like that, all the wires are. That's your valvetronic motor in place. As I said, there's everything you basically need done now. That's everything now back together. Obviously, I know many of you are going to say to me about the CCV pipe that we took off, which is over the back there. You can see it's all broken. Again, that's for another video because we're going to be removing the manifold. So that's going to be on another video. But this is how you'd replace the valve cover on the N52 engine. And now, obviously, the valve cover's all back together. It's really, really not hard. If you follow this video thoroughly, you'll know where every single bolt goes and where everything goes back. Obviously, it really isn't hard. Obviously, I know there'll be people that say it is hard, especially if it's your first time, but I've done this. Now this is going to be my 8th time doing a valve cover gasket on an M52 engine, so I know it like the back of my hand. But like I said, what I would recommend is something people don't tell you, is when you've done a few heat cycles on the engine, on the new valve cover, is reopen your bonnet. I wouldn't put your engine cover back on, and recheck all the bolts around the valve cover, because they may have come unloose and you can tighten them down just a bit more, but be very, very careful as you do that. You might be able to get a bit more turn on every single one. So do make sure you do that. I mean, if you smell any kind of oil burning, anything like that, then it means one of your bolts ain't properly seated, which means, because you know they're new, tighten them back down and you should be okay. And you shouldn't have to do that again, but I would recommend just check them, because when you do the few heat cycles, these should pull down so tight, you shouldn't be able to get any turns on them. But if you do manage to get turns on them, it means they wasn't torqued down correctly in the first place. So do make sure to do it, because I know a lot of people don't do that and then they start thinking they've got another oil leak coming from somewhere else, which isn't the case. It can be your bolts, especially at the back or around the side here, which would have come undone where you couldn't have tightened them tight enough in the first place. So do make sure to do that after, I would say, 3 to 4 heat cycles. Check them and they should be solid. They should not move them bolts at all, completely. If they do move, they're not tight enough. But overall, guys, this is the BMW N52 valve cover complete. And that is how simple it is. I know it looks like a lot of work. Many of you will be watching this video thinking, oh my God, this is a lot of work to get into, but it really isn't. It looks more intimidating than it really, really is. And I'm gonna tell many of you guys that right now. I think the hardest part about doing this is getting the valve cover off and back on because of everything in the way as you actually remove it, especially this wiring harness right here. It is a nightmare, but I've shown you how you can easily remove that to make your life a lot easier because instead of leaving all them cables in the way and risk crushing them or anything like that. Like I said, this one was leaking. Wasn't leaking badly, but you could smell it was leaking onto the exhaust headers. But now it's done, I shouldn't have no leaks at all going forward. So if you guys want to go ahead and attempt to do this yourself, now you can. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This is BMW Dr. Dean here, and this is my valve cover replacement done on my BMW 630i with the N52 engine. Thank you very much for watching. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.